Hello, hello, hello. And I'm going to have to delete that tree. Welcome back to this ultimate toolbox build. I think that's what we're going to call it from now on. As said previously, I use this build to showcase any mods I use, and I primarily use it for different cab rides, showcasing different liveries, different rolling stock, especially passenger services. In a previous build I used it to showcase a lot of Pendolino services, a lot of the different Pendolino liveries that we had available as well. And there's some more trees that train's just going by there, which I'm not a big fan of. They keep growing in. That's because the buildings on the other side of the wall are starting to spawn, and the towns, cities getting a little bit bigger, and the trees are coming over onto my track. I'm not happy about that. Anyway, let's get back into it. I thought I'd share some of the progress I've made on this build this week. It's a bit bitty. I've done a little bit. I've mainly added what we're going to call a new Crossrail line. Just a side note, I'm going to try my best to mention any mods I've used in the build, and any mods I do mention right now during this video, I will put in the description below. If there's any mods that you see that I don't happen to mention but you are interested in, don't hesitate to leave a comment below and I'll reply with a link if I can, as soon as I can. So let me explain what I've been up to this week. As you've probably seen in some shorts and screenshots, I've been working on a Crossrail link. Basically, we've got a line that runs from underneath our terminal station here, and it goes off alongside the main line but from underground, then pops up and then turns around to the left a little bit, one splitting off to our under construction international airport, and the other one splitting off going down to terminate at a station slightly further north where there will be connections there for the passengers as well. There are two stations underneath. One is an Acton, as this town's called, Acton Underground, where it goes east to west, and then the other station under there that it's also linked to is our Elizabeth line or Crossrail service. So as you can see, we have two stations. We have our underground service, which goes from east to west, and then crossing over the top of that is our Crossrail station that terminates here for now before it goes any further, before we extend on the build, coming from north to south. The mod I use for this is the Underground Stations mod. As I said, I'll put the link to it in the description below. The first time you see the track from our Crossrail service is just alongside our main line here on the approach to our terminal station. I'm still not sure what I'm doing with this, but I did want to have it sort of exposed a little bit in some areas towards it. I think for me what it is I'm not quite happy with the depth of it. I would like the track to be a little bit raised and just on the verge of having to create a tunnel. The issue with this is it has to be this depth to go underneath the terminal station, otherwise the underground stations won't actually work and we'll get an error. I did have a play about with the Build Anyway mod. If you haven't used that, that's a great way of getting around where the game itself won't let you build something because it will say like the slope's too steep or something like that. The Build Anyway mod will allow you to still build, especially if you know visually and you can see that is going to work. So I find the Build Anyway mod really, really helpful in that aspect, and just getting away, especially with some switches. Sometimes you can't put switches on top of bridges, and sometimes it can be a bit funny with switches on any parts of track, especially if you're going to do some cross switches, which I'm not a massive fan of, but sometimes they are necessary in some areas, especially if you're quite limited for space. So I highly recommend the Build Anyway mod. Again, link will be in the description below. Moving on, as you can see, our Crossrail service comes up above ground here. It comes up alongside the main line that we've got built, just nice and tidy. I've still got to add some detail to this, but I just wanted to show sort of the plan and the layout, what I've done with it. Again, I've used the compact tunnel entry for the exit of the tunnel. Do we call it an exit of the tunnel? Anyway, we've used the compact tunnel entry for the trains coming above ground alongside of it. I just like the compact tunnel entry because it creates a nice smooth transition from underground to overground, and you can sort of build assets around it quite nicely. As we see one of our Crossrail services alighting above ground. The track basically goes underground, then crosses to the right. Obviously, just in the distance on the left there, you can see that exposed area that I did, and it just crosses from left to right and goes under. This is mainly to also avoid where the main line also ducks underneath other parts of the main line there, because otherwise we would have had a collision with the subterranean train as well. So that's what we've done with that. As you can see, I've then built a nice modern bridge because I wanted to give it the appearance that it was a new line that had been bolted on. So I've used a nice modern white bridge. Unfortunately, I've got that many bridges installed. Sometimes I don't know where they've come from. If you are interested, I will try my hardest to find what bridge that is and who made it, because it's a nice, just a nice white bridge with some nice modern curves on it. There's a slightly better look on it. It just looks modern. It looks like it's been added at a later date. Obviously, we still need to do a lot of work on the railway around here, add a little bit more detail. We haven't even added the ballast. We can still see grass growing between the tracks there. What I've also used is a mod that allows you to build bridges at any height as well. That basically enabled me to keep the bridge retaining wall alongside it even when it was on the ground, so we get a nice continuous swoop with the bridge. Obviously, again, I'd like to add some more detail around it, but it is in place. This is probably one of the biggest changes. Obviously, we've expanded on what was already a pretty busy and a pretty big junction. We've added an ultimate station, an ultimate curved station, shall I say, to the left, and I've also added some building assets around it because I wanted to give it the effect that when we're pulling in, it's quite a high built-up area because we are coming towards our capital city and we are coming towards our terminal station. So I wanted to give that illusion. It does need a lot more buildings, but I was just messing about with some high-rise sort of buildings just to see how it is. What those buildings also do is they also spawn some plebs as well. So the platforms are mainly used. I've yet to work out how I would like to connect these with a road or anything, these two stations together, because I do think that a nice idea would be to have them some way connected, the one on the left there to the one on the bottom right. I'm not really sure. Maybe it might be as simple as a simple bus service because they are quite far apart. We could go with some sort of subway access, but I'm not sure if we might get some glitching with some plebs showing their heads because there's a height difference between the lower and upper as well. For the trains on this service, I've gone with the British Rail 341 with the TfL Crossrail livery. It's a 9-car set, and it's the closest I could find to the real Crossrail look. I looked high and low for the actual Crossrail trains. I'm not sure, and I can't remember off the top of my head what class they are. But this was the closest I could find. Basically, someone had taken a 341 and re-liveried it with the Crossrail livery on it. And I think it looks pretty good, and it's something just adds a little bit of difference to the line as well. And I wanted something like that. So with this station on the right, it's just a local service. And what we've done is we've added an up-down platform. And then we've also added a singular on the far left, just before that small retaining wall, a bypass line as well. Because eventually what I would like to have is some faster services bypassing this station and using that line as well. I thought I'd future-proof, shall we say, the rail line so we have loads of options. So just a minor change to this station. We've obviously extended out this station. We've got the GWR station platform there for our normal local services. What I've done is as this railway exits the tunnel with the rest of the track, I've curved it off to the left a little bit and added another ultimate station there. And they're connected via subways. So we have a subway. You can just see it at the end of the GWR station platform there on the left. And it's just connected by another subway platform here, which I've boxed off with retaining walls because I don't want any road access here. The only access is via the other station on the other side of the track. So I thought that was a bit different and it looked pretty good. I'm not really sure about the retaining wall yet, but I needed to do something just to isolate it a little bit, and then we could get no road access as well. So this is kind of something I've started working on. I've kind of laid out the track and the basis and kind of put some asphalt down to show where I want to work it. This is basically our Crossrail services depot that I'm sort of in the middle of creating. I've sort of laid enough track now, put some few little assets on it. I've sort of flattened some land around it because I wanted to expand on the sort of mini depots that are just to the north and just create a sort of area where there is a lot of railway services going on. As you can see from this very distant shot, there's not much going on at the moment. I'm thinking to the north of it that I might add some more housing and some more sort of local shops and raise it a little bit, so it just gives the feeling that the track's sort of in a cutting to a certain extent, so it's more compact and it looks like a more busy area. Because this is kind of a Crossrail service, I wanted to give that illusion as well. So that's probably what I'm looking at. That's why I've kind of kept the bridge height, the road bridge height either side, so I could build up an overbuilt area around it. On the south of it, I'm probably going to look at some more assets, much like that sort of rail depot that I've put in there in the shed. I want to mix it up and add a bit more variety, so I might add some more assets, or have a look on the Steam Workshop to see what there is. The assets that you can see there, I will put on the description below, the ones I've used for the depot and the train sheds on the left. I think I've done a video on the train sheds before on the left as well. I find them really helpful and really good fun. I also want to find some more assets of trains that I can just park there permanently, so it looks a bit busier. So if anybody knows if there's any what are they? 341 classes that I could just park on there, just to give it a little bit of something going on. That'd be quite cool, I think, anyway. Moving on, I wanted to create just outside our sort of capital cities as things are getting a little bit more spread out. As you can see, there's a line to the just underneath where you can see some trains going down. That's our equivalent to the Great Western Main Line, maybe. So there's a Western station just to our right. It's not finished yet. It's just a terminal station, and I've got some GWRs on there. I can't remember what classes I've put on there, but they're currently running up and down to a station, and I wanted to sort of link our Crossrail line into it somehow, and you'll get to see that in a second. But what I've done here is I've basically created a sort of village area. We've also got a login area just to the north, what I wanted to put, because when we do have some freight going, I wanted to have some sort of areas where things do come from. So we get the trucks going, we get the trucks going to our terminal stations. If we have any cargo with planes as well, we have those links in place. And it could even be a nice truck ride, who knows? But what I've done is just added some houses, schools, some different sort of grass areas, a little bit of farmland with some hedges. Whatever I can remember I say on this, and I'll probably go through this recording and I will add the mods there. So I will add the mods for probably the housing if I can find it, the school possibly. But what I wanted to point out here is you can see a lot of bare areas around the houses and around those circular sort of blobs of trees that I've put outside the station. That's only because it's at this distance. As you can see, if we go down at track level, you can see there is things here. I'm not sure why. This is a mod I downloaded literally a couple of days ago because I wanted to add a little bit of variety where it just wasn't grass and then farms, crops and soil. I wanted to find some more sort of ground textures. So this is kind of a mixture of, well, I think this is the one I used, a mixture of the weeds and grass. And there's some with dandelions and there's some with barley. There's all sorts. And what I'll do is I'll put a link in the description below for the download for this, because I found it nice because it just added a little bit of variety, and we just didn't get the sort of plain in areas that kind of don't really need anything. We didn't just have an area of sort of plain sort of bog standard grass. We had a bit of difference. There's some long grass in it, some really tall grass options as well. It's really quite nice. And as you can see here, I've also added some cows. I can't remember the mod I've used. If I find it, I'll put it in. If you really, really want it, stick it in the comments below and I'll find you your cows for you. Just with a shed, just a little local, little bit of farming, nothing major, just a bit of eye candy as we go down on this Crossrail service. I thought it looked really nice. Again, you can see our Crossrail service go to the right and our Western service on the left, just splitting away, split up by sort of like a dual carriageway I put across there. I've also broken up the trees around our logging camp here. I thought I'd put a bit of gravel in, and that's just to maybe show where some of the trees have been cut down and taken away. And I thought I'd do that just to break it up. Adds a little bit of detail. You won't really see that on the cab rides, but from an aerial point of view, it can look quite nice, I think. So moving on, what we've got here is just before our Western line connects to our Crossrail services or comes up alongside it and shares the space with it to lead down to the next station. On the left, the Crossrail service also splits off. So we have one service going off to our international airport and one service ducking under and linking up or coming alongside our Western service on the right. Again, making use of the compact tunnel entry, adding some fencing along the side as well with that new textured grass, long grass on it as well. Quite nice. It's just a nice, easy transition out and where we can split the lines off without having any slow corners. On the other side of that, you can see where our Crossrail services meet up with our Western services. You can see where the land actually worked out really well for me here. This was kind of, I didn't even have to mold much of this land. It actually is the way the hills did sort of gradient off. It worked out really nicely just by fluke. Where on the compact tunnel entry, the depth on the other side was just right, where the line could just pop out nice and smoothly. We didn't have to have too many slopes, so we've just added a nice circular tunnel exit there as it meets up with the Western service on the right. As you can see, we've used a nice, clean, modern bridge again for our airport services, and they swing back round and use this nice flying junction mod that I've kept in the white, again trying to keep this new modern look to it because it is a more recent line, or we're trying to get that look anyway. And here we have it, the beginnings of our international airport. What you can see here is I've added some road access that's near that village that we showcased a second ago. Using the compact tunnel entry with roads, they sort of come underneath and back over. I didn't want any roads crossing where planes are going to be coming in, because what we do have is we do have one plane service that I've already put in, because I just wanted to check the orientation of the airports and where the planes would sort of land and take off. And they just about that hill that you can see just there, where that's our Euro Express service going through that tunnel of that hill with just a line of trees, they come into land just across there as well. We've got a multitude of airports, so I've named that one that British Rail, I think you called that, British Airways plane that's just taken off uses there. That's terminals 1 and 2, and then we've got a terminal 3 just to the bottom left as well. So I thought it'd give us enough room for a lot of different air services. There's a plane just going over the top of those trees, going off that car park, which we will add assets to, and just coming in for a landing. And then we've got the compact tunnel entry roads, one way in and out, just wrapping around, going underneath and then back up again into the center of the airport. I will give you a link to the airport on the bottom left and the airport buildings on the top right. I wanted to give it a mixture of old and new, like we've built a new airport, but there's the original there and we just expanded on it. What I've also started doing is also adding a freight terminal to the airport as well, which is this small little one on the end here. So we have some freight access. I've started putting some buildings. I think one's a Royal Mail and one's a FedEx warehouse. There still needs to be a lot of work, as you can see here. I've just given it the road access. It still needs a lot of detail, a lot of finishing off, but it is in place, or starting to be in place. I just wanted to get the basis and the shape right and how I want it to lay. And it's looking pretty good at the moment. It's looking all right, but we have no freight services landing on there yet, but it is there nevertheless. I thought I'd give you a quick peek at the tunnel entry. This is a tunnel entry for our Crossrail services that feed the airport. What we have is basically the two lines split off. One side does a loop round, stops at the station, then comes back again. So we get a nice smooth transition. So we haven't got anything going start, stop, turn backs. It's just a nice smooth loop underneath. I've used some retaining walls, a little bit of fencings coming off the bridge, and just some bridges. This is actually this texture either side. So I've used some normal gravel alongside that, and the sort of crops, or not crops, the growth. I don't know what to call it. Who knows? That's actually the barley texture from that mod I talked about with the long grass, etc. So I thought I'd add that. We've got some fencing just wrapping like roughly around the airport. Again, we're getting some textures sort of glitching here from a distance. These grass textures don't seem to like me going too far away. I'm not sure if it's something to do with the performance tuning mod I'm using, or it is actually the texture itself. I've sort of had to think about that as I've been recording this video, and it might be from a certain distance. I've got like a read distance on it, and it won't show me from a certain distance. Who knows? Obviously, if we zoom in, you see like this fence is actually pretty... This is me messing about with these grass sort of textures, and the fence is pretty buried inside there. But that's the way it is right now. So I'm not sure if I'll keep that or not. That's just me messing about and having a little play with it. This is just a quick top-down view, so you can see the looped track that goes under our international airport, swings in from the left, swings round. There is actually 2 platforms on there. I thought I'd give it 2 platforms because we're going to have a mixture of slow services and faster services entering it, and I wanted to give them flat platform space so that there could be 2 trains parked there at once if need be. So there is 2 train stations in that underground station. Again, using the underground station mod, that will be in the description below. Anything else you see here, I will try to put in the description below. But that is about it. We've got a lot of bare roads, a lot of dead ends. There's a lot of detailing I do need to do on the right there. Like I said, for our Crossrail sort of depot needs a lot of work still. The airport still needs a fair bit of work. But I thought I wanted to show you what we've done with the railway. I'm quite pleased with this sort of Crossrail railway. I quite like the transitions I've done. I really like this sort of the use of the compact tunnel entry bridges. I really am quite happy with it. If there's anything you would have done differently, let me know. I really do welcome your comments. I love reading them, so it'd be really cool to see what you guys think. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this short update on this toolbox build. If you really enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. I really do appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next one.